Next, let's hear some opening remarks from Chloe.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's been really wonderful to get to know all of you over the past couple of days, so I'm really excited to share with you about the future of free speech in higher education. So just to connect that to a personal story for you from my side, I spent 20 years of my life in New York City. When I was 8 years old, I told everybody I was going to live in New York and be on television. And that is, what I did. But I went to Columbia University there, which at one time was kind of a hallowed place for me. But I did have to kind of keep down certain viewpoints, sort of sing a song, if you will, in order to get the grades I needed to get, in order to get into the clinical psych PhD program I wanted, which is where I also had to do a lot of self-censoring. And then, of course, as my business grew and I was getting a lot of media attention, which was great for the business, all that TV I wanted, but I always knew that there were certain things I just couldn't say. I never said anything that I thought was untrue, but I always knew that there were just certain things I just better not say. And that worked fine for me until COVID, when, and now I'm going to cry, they wanted to mask my then 3-year-old son. And that was the red line for me. I fled to Florida. I fled to the free state of Florida. Thank you. And that I felt safe for my family, but as a clinical psychologist, I said, how could it be that no other psychologists are talking about the harms of masking children like this? Almost as a public service announcement, I felt I needed to speak up about this. So I wrote an article, shared it with some colleagues to say, am I missing something? How come nobody else is talking about this? Is there something wrong with what I wrote? They said, no, this is all correct, but you shouldn't share it because it could keep people from masking their children. And so I said, okay, this is crazy. So I went ahead, I shared the article. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya picked it up. All kinds of great people picked it up.
I found it. That's how we became connected. Thank you.
Thank
Chloe.
you. I was in Florida having great conversations with people like Hadley and many other people. And that was actually what I noticed. My own cognitive process was opening up. I noticed I was becoming more emotionally present and my relationships were deepening and being more authentic. And that's what touched my interest in the mental health benefits of free speech. So now for my shameless plug, the book is, it's on pre-order, so you can scan it and get it at the table outside, or you can go to freespeechtoday.com and get it, because there's also a lot of bias in the publishing world. I had a very successful book before, and my publisher said, Chloe, we'll do any book with you, but not this book. And my prestigious agent dropped me. So thanks to Skyhorse, a great publisher, I was able to get this book published. So when I think about free speech and mental health, the etymology of the word psychology goes back to the word spirit. So when we silence someone from their ability to speak, we're not just trampling on their government rights, because we know those rights don't come from the government. We're trampling on their God-given rights. We're trampling on their spirit. And so that's why I feel so passionately about this as a psychologist. So I want to share with you 4 quick points. We're staying, should be well within our, 4 or 5 minute time limit here, about why free speech and mental health matter to the university. If universities care about mental health the way they always say that they do, and if they care about intellectual development, which presumably they say they do, then they should be embracing free speech, because free speech language is the primary tool for intellectual growth. It's how we organize our thoughts and convey and exchange information. It's how we develop good ideas and discard bad ideas. Moreover, when we stifle speech, we've seen what happens, right? So Galileo, for example, was jailed for saying that the earth orbits the sun, right? That was, quote, misinformation, and they stopped him. We also saw what happened when we censored the, quote, misinformation about COVID, right? Remember when you couldn't say that? Or what about misinformation that a man can't become a woman, right? So when we work on censorship, this is the second point, again, is that first is intellectual development, and secondly is the issue of misinformation. We're actually, I think, more vulnerable to misinformation when we stifle and squash open debate. And now the third point, of course, is mental health, because as a clinical psychologist, I can tell you it's very anxiety provoking to live your life believing that words are violence. Not only that you could say the wrong thing and it would be like running someone over with your car, or God forbid somebody says the wrong thing around you and, they're threatening your existence, right? And so when we start, going over the top with these, hate speech and bullying. Now, I'm with you on the idea that this doesn't mean I think that federally funded universities should be able to say, advocate for violence against any ethnic group on a federally funded campus. But what I'm talking about here is just simply free speech and the exchange of ideas. And when we stop people from doing that and we label all of that hate speech and bullying, to me, what that really is the bully becomes the person who's silencing someone who's just simply trying, to share a different opinion. And the fourth point is the issue of social support. We all know that we're in an epidemic of loneliness. And when we can't really be ourselves, the quality of our social support is absolutely degraded. And so we know that intellectual communities need vibrance. We need communication. I have felt so charged up by communicating with all of you this weekend. I feel like a light bulb, And so when we're on our college campuses, when we're in those classrooms or wherever that we may be, it's partly social support, it's partly a collegial relationship, as well as the spirited debates that we need to be having. So I just want to say again that this is a extremely important topic for me. And if we want students to thrive at universities, and if universities care about mental health and intellectual development, then they must embrace free speech. They can do that at freespeechtoday.com. I'm so eager to host book clubs online, whether it be at universities or if you have, kids or grandkids or just, any other type of book club or environment. My book talks about the cognitive and emotional benefits of free speech, as well as practical tools for speaking up, as well as for listening, since we also know that listening respectfully during a disagreement is an essential part of dialogue. So thank you all.